It all kicks off in Cairo, Egypt 5 years ago inside the extravagant mansion of a billionaire named Sullivan. That morning, he was just waking up, and after being served a breakfast he couldn't stand, he treated his butler like dirt. From the outside, the mansion was locked down tighter than Fort Knox, but the security cameras, they started going dark. Ms. Tarantula had already hacked into the whole system. Now it was Shark's turn. Over the comms, he let the crew know that Wolf was just about to get inside the mansion. At that moment, he was disguised as one of the guards and managed to fool another officer, while Piranha was hiding inside a fish tank, stirring up a mini whirlpool in the water. When it came time for Snake to move, he showed a little doubt about Miss Tarantula. She was the newest member of the crew, and he was nervous she might screw something up, but Wolf told him to ease up and cut her some slack, reminded him it was her first heist after all. Snake reluctantly welcomed her to the team, and within 5 seconds flat, they were putting the whole plan into action. Miss Tarantula shut down the security system once again, and once the whole crew was back together, they stormed in and confronted Sullivan. She asked why they hadn't just walked in through the front door instead of making such a crazy scene. To which the others replied that doing it this way gave their heist a whole lot more drama. Sullivan called them monsters, which got Wolf real heated. He showed his claws, and just when it looked like he was about to attack, he froze. His eyes locked on Sullivan's car. He said that ride was one of a kind, and he'd give up just about anything so long as they didn't lay a finger on his beloved vehicle. Ms. Tarantula didn't get why they went through all that trouble just for a car, but Wolf explained that when it comes to a heist, it ain't about the loot, it's about showing the world how incredible they were as a team. Sullivan added that the car had never even been driven and asked him to be a little more careful with it. Right then, Snake coughed up a bomb, and when the timer hit 0, it didn't explode. Instead, it set off a blast of colorful confetti. The crew made their getaway through the window, breaking their fall with a giant balloon shaped like Sullivan's head. That's when the Egyptian police started tailing them. To keep civilians out of harm's way, Wolf pulled off a wild maneuver behind the wheel. Ms. Tarantula, annoyed, complained about how dramatic his driving always was. He told her he only drove like that when the moment truly called for it, and today, no question, it definitely did. Their only way out now was the bridge. They used the traffic jam to push forward, knocking over a couple of the cops' motorbikes along the way. In the end, all the bikes got bunched up, and when they tried to cross, they realized the cops had him surrounded. Ms. Tarantula suggested using the ramp. While Piranha nervously whispered a prayer, Wolf stuck to the plan. From a crane, she jumped in right on time and got him out of trouble. From that moment on, Ms. Tarantula was officially part of the crew. Wolf, all excited, said he'd never drive another car in his life. Now in the present, he was driving an old busted-up car that was falling apart bit by bit. When he finally managed to park, Wolf turned to the audience. He said everything was going well and that after so many years, they were getting the gang back together. In their last mission, they'd made new friends, taken down Marmalade, and shocked the whole world by turning themselves in. Life in prison wasn't all bad. At least they stayed together. According to him, the only way to grow is to leave all the bad stuff behind. Now both him and his friends were trying to reform and become part of society. Wolf was looking to land an honest job, and that day he had a job interview. He was trying hard to stay optimistic. The guy in charge asked if he really wanted to work at the same bank he'd robbed 3 times. Meanwhile, Piranha had written on his resume that he'd saved the city from an evil villain, but the interviewer recognized him as an ex-con right away. Nervous, he started letting out farts without even realizing it. At the same time, Ms. Tarantula claimed she was great with all kinds of programs, from Windows to Photoshop. The interviewer asked her what she'd do if she saw a coworker breaking the rules. Without even thinking twice, she said she'd smack him, cause in her words, snitches don't deserve to live. Each interview ended in total failure. One by one, every member of the crew got rejected. Wolf asked for a shot, saying he was really trying to change. The manager, acting all fake nice, told him that with an attitude like his, there'd be an opening real soon and they'd give him a call. Wolf walked out happy, but when he came back later, he caught the guy tearing up his resume. Crushed, he decided to leave. He tried all kinds of jobs but hadn't had any luck with any of them. Back at the hideout, he found a pile of bills waiting, but still, he tried to stay positive. On the news, they were talking about a rocket launch that was heading for space. The bad guys were having breakfast, and when they saw Wolf walk in, they asked how it all went. He was trying to stay positive and quickly changed the subject. Ms. Tarantula, clearly amused, started teasing Piranha, saying his interview was hands down the worst one of all. Wolf asked him to stay optimistic, reminding the crew that life's full of obstacles, but it's still worth pushing through. Shark asked what they were supposed to do now that the media was linking him to some new criminal known as the Phantom Bandit. Wolf didn't get what he meant until he turned on the TV and saw the latest moves made by this mysterious thief. He had stolen 3 priceless items, but in his last heist, the guy left a little surprise for his viewers. When they opened the box, it exploded in a confetti bomb, the exact signature move the bad guys used to leave behind. Now the media was starting to believe the bad guys were back in business. It all started when a reporter complimented Wolf's new pompadour, and Chief Grunion declared with absolute certainty that it had to be them. Naturally, the crew wasn't thrilled about the accusation. Ms. Tarantula wondered how they were supposed to start fresh if they kept getting blamed for every bad thing that went down. That's when Snake showed up, looking all cheerful, wearing a smile so big it freaked everyone out. Nobody could figure out how someone so negative could suddenly be radiating that much positive energy. Before heading out, he told him not to wait up. He was going to the wrestling matches to blow off some steam. Meanwhile, Wolf decided to stop by and visit Diane. He told her about everything that had been going on lately, and she said she was glad to see him trying to be better. She admitted that when they first met, she thought he was full of himself, but he'd proven her wrong. Wolf admitted he was doing his best to stay positive, even if every rejection chipped away a little more at his hope. Diane explained that in her case, becoming a good person had been a whole lot easier, since no one ever found out she used to be the dreaded Crimson Paw. The two started joking around, got a little rough, and decided to train together. But Wolf ended up getting hurt and joked that the bruise wasn't exactly going to help his chances in any upcoming interviews. Things got a little flirty, but they decided to cool it. They both knew it wouldn't work. She was the governor, and he was an ex-con. Just then, Diane's assistant reminded her she had an appointment at the children's hospital and needed to get ready for the event. Before she left, Diane asked if they'd see each other the following week. Wolf said yeah, his schedule was wide open. She told him that no matter what happens, he shouldn't lose hope. He had to give the others a reason to trust him, and once he did, everything would fall into place. Besides, she said with a smirk, he really needed to work on that left hook. As he stepped outside, Wolf caught a fresh interview with Officer Gruñez on TV, which sparked an idea. Maybe there was a way they could win the public over. Back at headquarters, Gruñez was eager to close the case as soon as possible. One of her subordinates let her know her visitor was already waiting inside. When she walked in, Wolf greeted her. Surprised, she wondered what the hell he was doing there. Now that she had just been promoted to commander, Gruñez was trying to reorganize her office, and after noticing her board had been moved, she rushed to put it back in its proper place. Wolf told her that, even though they had their share of differences, maybe they could find a way to work together. She wanted to crack the case. He wanted to prove to the world that he could be one of the good guys. The only way to earn anyone's acceptance was to catch the Phantom Bandit. Gruñez considered calling Diane, but Wolf encouraged her to go ahead. After all, it was Diane who'd given him the idea in the first place. When they looked deeper into the case, they realized the system had been hacked right before each heist. To figure out where it was done from, they'd need the help of someone with serious hacking skills. So they reached out to Ms. Tarantula, who gave her take. The hacker didn't act alone. There was someone else involved, an inside man. They called Shark next. He pointed out that the building's janitor was actually in on the whole thing with the criminal crew, but he wasn't the only one involved. There was still one last member they hadn't uncovered yet. According to Piranha, the guy who swiped the device came in through the air vents. He was grossed out by Gruñez's food. Once they pieced that part together, Gruñez, with her usual sarcasm, asked why they didn't just call another expert to help them out. When they tried reaching Snake, he didn't pick up, didn't answer his voicemail either. Snake was known for being super chill and a total pacifist, which threw Gruñez off. She wasn't expecting that kind of attitude from him. Wolf noticed something odd about the stolen items. Only 3 of them were made from a rare metal called MacGuffinite. That gave them a clue. Now they knew exactly what the thief was after, and based on that, they figured out what the next target might be. Gruñez kicked them out, but as they were leaving, they discovered that the item with the highest concentration of MacGuffinite in the world was the championship belt from Guatalamargo, set to be awarded that very night to the state's wrestling champ. That's when they remembered. Snake was supposed to be at that event. After poking fun at him a little, they started thinking maybe he was the culprit. The thefts had all gone down during the exact same hours Snake claimed he was working. If he gets caught, Snake's going to jail. Right then, Grunt calls him. She was in a good mood and warns him the thief's gonna strike that night. Shark, freaked out, tosses the phone. Wolf suggests they rescue their buddy, but Piranha insists they tear him apart piece by piece. In the end, they all decide to hit the event determined to save Snake. At the stadium, the annual champ, El Guapo, is fighting off his challengers. As they pull up, their car gets trashed. While looking for Snake, they notice the place is packed. There's food stands, flashy cars, wild wrestling outfits. Grunt's there too, smiling wide when she sees him, but Shark knocks her out cold, and they leave her unconscious in the restroom. The crew sets out to find Snake, and once they spot him, they all jump him. But he ain't alone. His girl Susan is right there with him. The two of them are acting real lovey-dovey. Ms. Tarantula thinks she's his lunch, but Snake clears it up. Susan's his girlfriend. They all start roasting him, but Susan knows exactly who they are. When El Guapo beats his opponents, the ref's just about to hand him the belt when a new wrestler steps into the ring. Wolf realizes the Phantom Bandit is actually this new fighter. Just as she's about to attack El Guapo, the gang confronts her. They rip off her mask, and Wolf tells the crowd she came to steal the belt, but the pig manages to frame him without breaking a sweat. Piranha tries to snatch the belt from her, but it's no use. All the wrestlers and fans try to stop him. Grunt sees him running and feels betrayed when she finds out the belt's been stolen. Just when they're cornered, Susan helps him make a break for it. After a wild chase, Grunt issues a warrant for the bad guys. Her officers gotta do whatever it takes to hunt him down. Right then, the pig wrestler checks in with her boss, saying the plan worked like a charm. While the cops were out hunting, Wolf was realizing just how deep they were in it. Meanwhile, Susan was was earning the crew's trust. After that, the couple starts telling how they met. A few months back, they bumped into each other on a bus, and turns out they both had a craving for guinea pig. When they wrap up their story, they kiss in a way that's straight up gross. When Susan starts explaining their first date, the group begs her to skip that part. Wolf tells them they gotta focus on the mess they're in now, while Snake jokes that Wolf's acting that way because the governor stuck him in the friend zone. During a press conference, reporters ask Diane if she's gonna issue a warrant for the criminals, but she chooses not to answer. Right then, she gets a call from an unknown number. Realizing it's Wolf, she asks him what's going on. He tells her the truth and explains it was all a setup and now they need her help bad. Diane asks for a clue that'll help her assist him, and he mentions the treasures of Megafinita. For now, he's gotta stay in hiding. Very soon, she plans to visit someone she knows who's got info on that mineral. Wolf thanks her for helping out, and once the call ends, Diane says she's heading to see Marmalade. Back with the crew, everyone's knocked out cold. Wolf can't figure out what happened, but in that moment, Susan sedates him. Before passing out, Wolf hears her speaking to her boss again. When they wake up, they're all tied up and gagged. The Phantom Bandit shows up and starts telling a story. A long time ago, there was a fearless wolf. Then she properly introduces herself, names Kitty Cat, and she ain't alone. Pigtail's with her, and so's Susan, but that ain't her real name, it's Shadow. Snake, seeing her, feels crushed. He realizes everything they had was a lie. He's heartbroken and admits she was the perfect woman for him. She even outdid him. The rest look at him stunned, since she's clearly been beyond toxic. Wolf asks what they want from them. Kitty says they're planning something real big, something too ambitious to pull off alone. They know these guys could use a job and she needs new people, pros with unique skills, so she's offering them one last gig. Wolf refuses, and they all say they've changed, they're good now, and don't want to go back to their old ways. Kitty mocks them, then suddenly switches to a serious tone. She says she likes red lollipops, and reminds them sometimes people ain't who they say they are. Right there, we see they already knew Diane was the Scarlet Claw. If the world found out, her life would be over and a huge scandal would break loose. So she steps in and blackmails them. If they don't help, she'll expose Diane's secret and ruin the happy life she's built. With no other option, Wolf agrees, and Kitty shows them the mission. They gotta steal the rocket and prove what they're made of. Out of options, the crew decides to go along. Piranha asks if that means they're the bad guys now. Wolf tells him yeah, and adds that Kitty thought this whole thing through. But she missed one tiny detail. When all this is over, she's gonna regret threatening them. In prison, Diane demands to see Marmalade. When he shows up, he's physically changed. Marmalade asks what she needs, even though he already knows what's going on outside. His life behind bars is actually pretty comfy. To switch the topic, Diane asks what he knows about the Megafinita. That's when Marmalade explains it's a special mineral, but he wants something in return before spilling more. At first, it seems like he's asking for his freedom, but then he says all he really wants is to play with her. To get things moving, Kitty hands out the proper gear to each member. But for Wolf and Piranha, all that's left are some weird looking costumes. Then Kitty drops the real bomb. Neither of them is joining the launch. The only way to get past all the security at the launch zone is by stealing Jeremiah Moon's watch, the head of the whole space expedition. Stealing the watch means stealing the rocket. The catch? Moon never takes it off. But recently, a shot opened up. A wedding he's planning to attend. Ms. Tarantula gets all hyped, and Kitty lays out the rest. The wedding is invite only and swarming with security, so they gotta get real creative. Shark pretends to be a florist, while Shadow sneaks in disguised as a waitress. Kitty mentions Moon wears these special glasses that tell him who's worth talking to. Anyone flagged gets a 30-second convo with the guy. The plan kicks off. First, Piranha handles the security while Snake works on a real tricky lock. He says picking locks is like romance. Starts off easy till all the defenses melt away. After killing the power, Pigtail poses as a techie, and Ms. Tarantula jumps in to hack the system. Finally, Wolf shows up at the party playing the role of a tycoon named Billy Lobato. Ms. Tarantula messes with Moon's glasses, and they manage to get FaceTime. Once everyone wraps their part, they all wait for Wolf to make the move. But then Snake and Shadow start flirting, and she ends up dropping her gun right onto the bride's head, knocking her out cold. Meanwhile, Wolf convinces Moon they should team up. They shake hands, but that's when Sullivan, the rich guy from the start, shows up. Wolf tries to stay low-key so he don't get spotted, but Moon's gotta bounce. Kitty, pissed, confronts Wolf and demands to know if he's sabotaging the whole op. But that ain't all. Shark walks in with the bride, and turns out she's totally sedated. Then the priest steps in, and Shark knocks him out, blowing the whole plan to pieces. Kitty, pissed off, threatens Wolf, who swears he'll do whatever it takes to get the watch back. The bride finally shows up to the wedding, while Ms. Tarantula cheers with excitement. Wolf dresses up as the bride, and Moon, not suspecting a thing, tells her she looks beautiful that day. But wait, there's more. Sullivan figures out who Wolf really is. Right in the middle of the ceremony, Shark shows up pretending to be the priest, so Sullivan cuts the whole thing off and tells Moon the truth. But when he pulls the veil off, he realizes Moon had already switched places with Wolf. In the end, Moon gets kicked out of the wedding while the crew takes off with the loot. Kitty, real curious, asks Wolf how he pulled it off, and he starts breaking it all down. The heist had 3 steps. First, set the bait, then flip the script, and finally score the prize. So first they got Sullivan to believe who Wolf really was. Then they made him think the bride was the fake. And last, they tricked him all the way through. That's how they managed to get away with it. Meanwhile, over in prison, Marmalade's still messing around with Diane, who's already looking bored out of her mind. Marmalade goes on about how the game's all about brains, strategy, and more than anything, knowing how to outsmart your enemy. And hey, it ain't every day the governor comes by to chat about magnetic terraforming. He tells her that MacGuffinite is like the opposite of gold, and when you hit it with extreme voltage, it turns into a giant gold magnet. Why bother robbing a bank, he says with a smirk, when the gold could just come to you. Diane thanks him for the chat, but right before she leaves, Marmalade tells her she wasn't the only one who came to see him. Turns out someone else was there a few days back. Curious, Diane checks the older recordings and finds out where Kitty's been hiding, her secret lair. Pigtail, on the other hand, feels down because she knows that after this last job, chances are they won't see each other again. Meanwhile, Shadow asks Snake not to hold a grudge over the whole fake relationship. Even though they both deny catching feelings, they end up admitting they actually like each other. Elsewhere, Wolf's talking with Kitty. She explains the only way to get him back in the game was by framing him. That way she could force him out of retirement. Now that she's got what she wanted, she's ready to hand him the USB. But first, she tells him about her very first heist. How the first thing she ever stole was a lollipop. Back in school, the teacher only gave lollipops to the good kids, and she was always the one left out. One day, when she noticed no one was watching, she stole all the lollipops. Since then, if anyone wanted one, they had to come to her. That was the first time she felt powerful. The more heists she pulled off, the more respect she earned. She asks him why he'd want to leave a life like that. She thinks his new mindset is naive. People don't forget, no matter how much you try to change and prove you can do good. She tells him to give up hope and just enjoy the lollipop. Those words made him think, but still, Wolf walks away. When they all meet up, Wolf asks if they managed to record Kitty's confession. Once they have it, the next step is to visit Grunez and hand over the tape. But his friends notice Wolf is distracted and ask what's wrong. He wonders aloud, what if they picked the wrong path? But his friends reassure him, saying that now they'll all be seen as heroes and get a better life. When they start the car, they find out it's out of gas. That's when the bad girls show up, chaining them up with gold. They lay out their plan, use the MacGuffinite to send it into space and turn it into a giant magnet, pulling off the biggest heist in history. Plus, to add drama, they plan to leak Diane's video and expose her truth to the whole world. The only way to stop it would be to press a button, but that button activates the magnet. They gotta stay chained up until the cops arrive, making sure no one finds out Diane's secret. After all, these girls really were bad and planned to betray them from the start. Days ago, Kitty met secretly with Marmalade, and together they cooked up this plan. Shadow calls the cops, and even though things are tight, Snake's still in love with her. The crew's not ready to give up, but when they pull out the USB, the video keeps loading. As the girls break into the facility, Red tries to hack the system but fails. Only 4 seconds left. As a last resort, Wolf suggests throwing the laptop into the forge, but when they try, it doesn't fall, and the video finishes loading completely. Grunez shows up ready to arrest them. When the girls try to board the rocket, Diane stands her ground. She knew their plan, and after taking them down, she declares them under arrest. Kitty mocks her, asking if she didn't already know about the video. Now everyone knows the truth. Hundreds of messages flood in, and suspicion against her spreads fast. Right then, someone shoots Diane with a tranquilizer dart, and barely conscious, she manages to get on the rocket. The news breaks that Diane Foxington was actually the famous Scarlet Claw. Meanwhile, Dr. Marmalade has been released while the bad guys remain behind bars. Wolf tries to convince Grunez, but his words don't stick. She still doesn't trust them. The girls activate the rocket, and just when all seems lost, Grunez puts her faith back in them. The group hugs her and spills everything about Kitty, the rocket, and what went down. And like fate confirming it, the rocket fires up right then. The villains decide to board the rocket, and just before jumping in, Grunez warns them that when this is over, they'll end up in jail. Wolf thanks her for everything, and the group fights to get on the rocket, even though they're at a disadvantage. They try to open the door as the alarm blares, but the girls pay no mind. Moon arrives at the station while the bad girls reach the space station and keep pushing their plan. Despite the freezing cold, the bad guys realize climbing up without a suit wasn't their smartest move. Right then, they watch Pigtail create the magnet with the MacGuffinite using energy cells. Once the device is ready, they've got a plan to stop him. The villains suit up in space gear, scared but cautious. Ms. Tarantula and Shark take on hacking the system. Piranha and Snake are set to shut down the power. And finally, Wolf will face Kitty. As they split up, Ms. Tarantula leads Shark, though he doesn't understand a single word she says. Snake tells Piranha not to get nervous, but as he tries, he starts letting out farts. The magnet powers up and a flood of messages hits the world's rich. Everyone's gold starts floating into the air. Meanwhile, Marmalade jumps into his golden car and blasts off into space. Wolf sneaks into the station just as the gold piles up. Piranha panics. The bad girls spot them and watch Snake float out of control. Shadow begs him to stop. She doesn't want to hurt him. Kitty meanwhile slugs Wolf and tells him the plan has to keep going, no matter the cost. She cranks up the magnet's power, and the world descends into chaos. A gold storm begins wrecking the city. While Kitty celebrates, Wolf calls her out, saying that sometimes the word gold sounds made up. He kindly asks her to turn off the magnet, or he'll do it himself. They both struggle for control. Snake and Piranha keep floating in space, trying to find a way to stay safe. During the fight, Kitty asks Wolf why he's risking everything for people who never gave him a chance. She reminds him that back when he was the big bad wolf, at least they respected him, now he's just a joke. But Wolf fires back that what she felt for him wasn't respect, it was fear. Respect, he tells her, is something you earn, and he hopes someday she'll understand that. The fight rages on and Kitty smashes the switch. But Wolf's real plan wasn't to shut down the magnet, it was to steal the watch. Once he gets it, he activates the rocket to save himself. Piranha, desperate, pops a hole in his suit to boost himself forward, while Wolf crashes the rocket into the magnet to destroy it. The gold rains back down to Earth, and at the last second, Shadow saves Snake, who finally admits his feelings for her. Kitty's furious and demands how they're gonna get back to Earth. Suddenly, she grabs Wolf by the throat, and just when it looks like she's about to finish him off, Diane steps in to save him. Seeing her, he doesn't hesitate. He pulls her into a hug. She kisses him, and he jokes, asking what happened to that just friends thing. Diane says that now that she's no longer governor, she can afford to bend the rules a little. The group congratulates them, and everyone joins in a big hug. Pigtail and Shadow come over too, but right then the rocket starts breaking apart. They're about to crash into Earth. Each of them accepts this bitter fate, though Wolf ain't ready to give up so easy. He wants to find a way out, but before he can say more, the scene cuts to his funeral. Finally, after all that time, the people accept them. Funny enough, the only survivors were the ones who pulled off the heist in the first place. At the end, Grunez walks into her office and it's revealed the villains are still alive. Despite all the hardships, she decides to give them a shot. Now they'll work as agents for the International Supergalactic League of Protectors. Grunez congratulates them, they're gonna be secret agents, and that's how the movie wraps up.